doing English Part 2, that is writing and language. As we've got people coming in, I'll get formally started in about a minute, but open up that chat, and here's what we want to do. If you have any questions, throw them in there now, and we'll make sure we address them. Second, I want, as you're coming in, give me a sentence in the chat or just a phrase. How are you feeling about SAT writing and language? So even if you don't have a question, I want to get a feeler out there before we really begin. How are you feeling about this test? Does this seem pretty easy? Are there specific things that stress you out about this test? You can tell me, I really don't know much about the writing and language test. I'll start here pretty soon, but get that in the chat and that'll get us kicked off today. All right. I know people are joining us. We're going to get started soon. Again, I just typed this in the chat. To get started, write in the chat how you're feeling about writing and language. So I've got someone said, you're excited for this session, definitely needing help with the writing. Tell me more. Tell me if you're coming in, what are you thinking about with the writing and language portion of this exam of the SAT? We'll get started in about 30 seconds. We'll get kicked off. And we're getting kicked off in about 10 seconds. Glad you're here. Chat is not super active yet. I know people are still probably logging on. Some people are going to watch this on replay, so are not live with us. Let's talk about the plan for today. So we're together for just about an hour. We're going to focus in on SAT writing and language. If you're not with us live, if you're watching the replay, or if you think of something afterwards, use the Discord chat that's attached to this stream tonight. You can throw your question out there or see any conversation about SAT, specifically SAT writing and language, as we're getting close to the day you'll be taking the test. So the best way to practice for English SAT is by doing deliberate practice. So Monday went really well. We had a lot of really good practice on the reading portion. Make sure you check out that session. Today is going to be even more hands-on. There's not as much for me to kind of walk through. I don't have as many tips and tricks with the writing and language exam, but we do have a practice set we're going to do today. So our plan today is very simply this. I'm not going to lecture at you on grammar rules. We're going to apply them as we see an SAT passage. That's the way I firmly recommend that you practice. So I'll talk more about that as we go. But got a couple people in the chat saying we're ready to go. Let's do this. I do want to talk briefly here, and again, more time to practice tonight than Monday night if you happen to be at that one. But tonight, let's talk briefly about what's on this portion of the exam. So really quickly, on your SAT exam day, it's broken into 4 major sections. The first 2 are English. The last 2 are math. For English, you're going to be starting with the longer one, SAT reading. Today, we're talking about part 2, SAT writing and language. Don't get confused. This is not the SAT essay, which is optional, which some students, but not all students take. When I say SAT writing and language, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about if you're not sure yet. This is really where you are. You see a text, you're the reviser, you're the editor. That's the role that you're going to play here. This portion, unlike the reading that takes 65 minutes, is 35 minutes. But there's 44 questions. So if you're good at math, you already see, okay, that's more questions than minutes. I've got to do this exam much more briskly. Again, I'm going to keep referencing back to Monday to make sure you check out that stream at some point if you have an hour or even, click through. Here's some tips and tricks at the beginning anyway, because although there's a lot of similarities between SAT reading and SAT writing and language, there's also a lot of key differences. One of them is, although there are more questions than minutes here, this is actually an easier portion of the exam to complete on time than the SAT reading portion. So I'll kind of show you why as we get into today, but more students actually finish this portion of the exam, even with a minute or two to spare, than the SAT reading portion. So you do got to work briskly. You do got to make sure you're ready to go. The moment the proctor says you may begin, you want to be fresh. You don't want to take 5 minutes to get into it, like mentally. However, you can knock this out in 35 minutes. You've got 4 passages here. They're much shorter than an SAT reading passage, and they're much more easier to comprehend. This is not a reading test. This is a how good are you at editing and revising test. So this is checking your grammar and your writing style, or should I say organizational methods and techniques through the lens of revision. So that's what this test is about. Mathematically, it stacks up. There's going to be 11 questions per passage every single time. So you'll get used to that if you start to practice or if you've been practicing. Let's talk about these passages. They're each going to be 400 to 450 words. On Monday, I said with the SAT reading, that's going to be 500 to 750 words, like in that ballpark. So this is a shorter text, but also much easier to comprehend. It's going to cover more high interest topics than the SAT reading portion does. And I'm going to keep referencing it because you're going to do reading first and then writing and language back to back. You're going to get out of a 65-minute brain-numbing 65-minute test, which is testing your reading on, I'll be honest, topics that will probably not be super interesting to you. College Board chooses topics that are accessible, but stuff that you're probably not super passionate about. You might be more interested in the SAT writing and language topics. They're easier to understand, the lexile levels are much lower, and they're higher interest. So things such as history, careers, and science. But again, the history and science passages will be much more accessible than the SAT reading test. Here's the skills that you are getting tested on here. And I just put these in my own words. I'm going to walk through these very quickly. Number 1 is organization. Every passage has 11 questions. At least 2 or 3 of them will be organization-based questions. Instead of talking more about these, I'm going to just show you them when we practice tonight. Make sure we're comfortable understanding and knowing what to do on every single type of question. Okay, sentence structure is the second. That is, again, the flow of an individual sentence. Parts of sentence structure might be appropriate transitions or appropriate phrases. Some of this test, they're going to have you play around with the order of sentences. So anytime you just are flow of thought is a big part of this exam. Whether it's big picture organization, they have you move around sentences sometimes. Here's a sentence. You decide as the reviser, where does it best fit to flow the ideas? So I actually really like this test. This is all about stuff that's important in life. We're not just teaching to a test when we're assessing or practicing SAT writing a language. It's really good revision skills I want everyone to be able to have. All right, so the third is punctuation. These are the most classic grammar questions. I will touch briefly on that tonight. Punctuations, they're going to ask you some questions about period versus colon versus semicolon versus comma. So we'll definitely want to make sure, I don't have slides on it, but I will talk about it. I do want to make sure everyone is feeling comfortable with those 4 things. You will likely get 4 or more punctuation questions out of your 44. On average, it's 1 per passage, sometimes a little bit more. Okay, verb tense is another one. This should feel pretty easy. If you hear your teacher in English ever say, use parallel structure, that's what we're talking about with verb tense. We want to be consistent throughout the entire passage. If it should be past tense, we're going to keep it in past tense. If it should be in present tense, we're going to keep it in present tense. You look at the verbs surrounding the context of the question, just to make sure you're consistent with verb tense. And again, flow of language. This is beyond just individual sentence structure. When I say flow of language, it's again just making sure that the idea is clear and one idea is building to the next, either within a sentence or sentence to sentence to sentence. Again, that's the skill, or those are the skills that we're going to be practicing and you're going to be preparing for as you get ready for this exam. All right, let's talk about the question format. As I'm talking about, this is not assessing your comprehension. The assumption is that you comprehend, you understand this passage because it is a very accessible passage. You might still have to pause and reread, especially if your mind wanders for half a second. But I don't stress. If you're with me on Monday, I stressed annotating the SAT reading passage. I certainly don't do that here because I don't think it's necessary. I talked about annotating a harder text to keep you engaged and to make sure you're actually comprehending it. I think that you'll be engaged in actually comprehending it. Obviously, you've got to do some self-checks. If annotations help you, absolutely do them. Just jot down the main idea as you go. You got to go so briskly here. I don't think you'll need to annotate. It's certainly an option, but I found that my students typically understand the passage really well without needing to annotate because these are much easier. Instead, the whole time you're reading, make sure you're comprehending, but focus on what changes you see should be made. And I'll kind of explain that for a second. I like to say read skeptically. Read looking for errors. Now, I have good news. The SAT writing and language test is going to tell you where there's an error or where there's a potential error. But every time you're reading, be like, that doesn't sound perfect. I would do it better. This is something that if I was revising it, I would change. Now, the majority of things that are not flagged for you are going to be great. You're not going to have to change them. But there are some things when you're thinking about the flow of thought that are going to be intentionally out of order. And there's going to be a question that says, put these sentences back in a better order. Those questions are annoying, especially because this is a timed assessment, but it's a really good skill. And it's maybe the most important skill that's assessed here is how can you really track the flow of thought and build from one idea to the next. So if I read two sentences, and the third one, or I shouldn't say I read it, as you read two sentences, and the third one kind of gives you pause. You're like, that doesn't fit. Keep that in mind. You might even want to star it of like, this is where I had a hiccup when I was reading, because maybe they're going to have you come back to it at a later question. And we'll see exactly the format tonight. If you are familiar with it or not, we'll make sure you are before we are out of here today. 4 possible answer choices, just like the entire SAT. Okay, I talked about this on Monday for reading. Let's talk about it now for writing and language. Should you read the question stems before or after you read the passage? This is going to be different than my recommendation for SAT reading. On SAT reading, I said, read the whole passage, get all in, annotate, focus, make sure you comprehend it, and then look at the questions. I firmly believe that's the best strategy for SAT reading and just the best strategy for any reading. You don't want to keep interrupting your reading by trying to search for an answer. You want to read. Now, this is different because you're in editing mode. And this actually, I'm going to give you advice that applies outside of the SAT. Anytime you're editing or revising a passage, anytime you see something, you want to flag it, fix it if you can, or come back to it for later. And we'll actually look at both tonight. 9 times out of 10, you are going to read every word, get to a flagged question that says there might be an error here, finish the sentence that it's in, maybe read the sentence after it for context, answer the question, and then move on. 9 times out of 10, you can forget that question, answer it with confidence, move on. Don't forget the passage, don't forget what you're reading, don't forget the topic, but you don't have to go back to the question. So they're going to be in order, of course, and they're going to flag it. And I'll show you the format tonight, and we're going to do exactly as I would have you do on the test as we do it together. So you're not answering the questions before, you're just pausing. You're not reading the questions before, you're just pausing on the questions every single time you get to them. All right. Talk about timing really briefly one last time here. Not nearly as stressful as the SAT reading, but you don't want to finish 10 minutes early either, right? Everyone has the same amount of time. College Board, when they give you a score, they know how much time you had. It's up to you to maximize that time. So you have a little bit less than 9 minutes per passage. That's how this math shakes out. With that in mind, don't finish a passage in 5 minutes unless you're like super, super confident and you did everything the right way. You're going to read every word. You're not going to skip down to the questions. But you do want to go briskly. So if there's an annoying question that you're like, man, I know I could get this done and I could answer it correctly if I had 5 minutes. I have bad news still. You don't have 5 minutes. You have 8 minutes to 9 minutes per passage. You don't have 5 minutes for one question, right? Take your best guess or just completely guess if you're like, I don't have time for this. Flag it, come back to it if you have time. Now, if you are way ahead of schedule, slow down and answer the question. But if you're behind schedule, I don't want you taking 5 minutes on one question that might be a harder question anyway, and then have to guess blindly because you didn't get to the whole fourth passage. Again, that doesn't happen as often on the SAT writing and language. I don't have numbers. College Board doesn't release numbers, but from my experience as a proctor and as a teacher, for sure, less than half of the students who take the SAT reading do not finish that portion. The SAT writing and language, much, much more students finish. But again, I want you to maximize your time. So I would not spend 12 minutes on passage 1. If there's a question that's going to take you too long, flag it, come back to it if you have time, but go on to passage 2 after about that 9-minute mark. I want to really emphasize one more thing before we practice. You are reading quickly. I do want to make sure you're comprehending, but read every single word. Please don't jump down to the questions. In fact, you will not be as successful as you would be if you do it that way. Now, I'm going to be fully honest with you. A lot of these questions you actually can jump down to and answer successfully. Maybe you'll read the sentence before and after it for context, and you'll get in and you'll get out, especially those punctuation questions. Those you don't really need much context for. You just need to see the flow of thought. There are bigger questions, though, bigger picture questions, though, that you absolutely need to see the flow up to the question in order to answer correctly. And even questions at the very bottom of a passage might need you to understand the flow of the previous 3 paragraphs. That doesn't happen often, but the point is College Board absolutely expects you to read everything here because this is really testing your revision skills on a work as a whole, not just as like a few random sentences in a work as a whole. All right. If you have questions, let me know. And we got Jed helping out in the chat as well. So Jed, thank you for being here today. We've got you. Again, if you think of something after today, go to Discord, continue the conversation. We are here to support you. The best way to practice SAT, I talked about this Monday. It's the same thing for now. It's deliberate practice, which we're going to do tonight. And it's looking at the questions that you missed, which we're also going to do tonight. We're going to look at 11 questions tonight. That is one full passage. I got this from SAT Practice Test 1. Again, the best way to get to practice SAT is one of 2 ways. Number 1, just type into Google, College Board SAT practice tests. There are 8 full-length practice tests. So there are literally 8 of these times 4 because there's 4 passages of SAT writing per practice test. So you have a ton of resources there. Now, I do want to talk about this briefly, like for after tonight, if you want to practice on your own. I do both ways. I would recommend both ways. 1, do some timed practice. 2, just take some practice on your own. You can also use Khan Academy as a second tool. Khan Academy gives you immediate feedback on every question, or at least immediate results on every question. So lots of practice opportunities. You will not run out of resources. If you do, you know there's a ton of test prep books. Don't spend money on anything, though, until you have used everything on Khan Academy that you've seen, until you start repeating questions all the time. And 2, do this first, College Board's website itself. If they give you 8 free practice tests, don't pay anyone else for a practice test until you've used the best resources that happen to be free. Okay, and come on to 5, we'll keep working through stuff together as well. All right, so with all of that, I pulled this practice from College Board's free resources. We're going to work through it together. Again, today is not about timed, but still get that time practice down, kind of get your pace under you for what's too fast, what's too slow as you practice these. All right. Got a question in the chat. Let us know if the stream is freezing up. I got one person that said that. I'm not sure if it's on Fiveable's end or on just your computer. So if anyone else is having that issue, let us know in the chat, and we'll see if there's anything we can do. All right. Give me 2 seconds. I'm just going to see if there's anything I can do. Okay, I will circle back to see if there's anything. I got 5 or 6. Yeah, it's freezing. Hey, if it freezes, are you not hearing everything that I'm saying? So just let me know that in the chat too. And I apologize if that's the case, but let me know and then we'll keep moving. Jed, thank you. Jed said, try refreshing your page or clear your cookies, all of that. Happened right before to Jed, works right after I did it. So try that. I'll wait like 30 seconds since this is a perfect pause point anyway. And in 30 seconds, we are going to keep on going. But I have the chat open, so do let me know if the problem continues or if it gets worse. We'll do some practice here in about 20 seconds now. All right. Do keep us posted. I obviously am here for you, and I want you to be getting actual good practice out of today. Again, let us know if there are questions that arise. If there's any you want me to slow down on, we're going to see 11 practice questions. All right, let's get started. So I typed these up for slides, but you would see this on one page. Now you will see this exactly like I presented it with, again, I mean, it'll look a tiny bit different, but there's going to be the text on one side, questions on like a column on the right. The questions will be aligned with exactly where, or they'll be in order with exactly where the potential error occurs. I keep saying potential error because every single time, or most of the questions you'll see this tonight, A is often keep this as it is. So we're going to read a draft and we'll just say, hey, are there any upgrades or tweaks we can make to make this better? All right, so even though I don't see a question yet in the first 2 paragraphs, I just got done talking about this, we absolutely want to read every single word. We want to get a grasp of what this topic is. The title is Way to Go. That is a pun. If you didn't catch it, whey is a type of food we're going to talk about. All right, so I'm going to read the 2 paragraphs. Just follow along with me. Next slide, we'll get to the first question. All right, Greek yogurt, a strained form of cultured yogurt, has grown enormously in popularity in the United States since it was first introduced in the country in the late 1980s. From 2011 to 2012 alone, sales of Greek yogurt in the U.S. increased by 50%. The resulting increase in Greek yogurt production has forced those involved in the business to address the detrimental effects that the yogurt making process may be having on the environment. So I have to know that because I'm going to ground myself before the first question. We're talking about Greek yogurt. We're talking about its impact on the environment. That's what I got to get. All right, yogurt's getting more popular, but this production has negative environmental impacts. Let's go to the first question. I'm going to read all the way up to it, and then we will utilize the chat. I know some of you might be like tuning in, but the more that you participate in the chat, the more deliberate practice we'll have tonight, the more productive your evening will be here. So let's do this. Fortunately, farmers and others in the Greek yogurt business have found many methods of controlling and eliminating most environmental threats. Given these solutions, as well as the many health benefits of the food, the advantages of Greek yogurt blank the potential drawbacks of its production. This is a question that you really just have to be in control of the 4 answer choices. If you don't know, I think you will for these 4, but if you don't know what outdo or outperform means, then you do have to use process of elimination and guess. But let me talk about that a little bit more once I see what you think it is. What word best fits the actual meaning here? Put your answer in the chat and we'll see how we do. I got a bunch of you already did that. I'll just wait 5 seconds for anyone else. All right, so you're always going to want to have the answer in your own head before you look at the chat, just so people don't convince you otherwise. But let's look at this really quickly. And if we all get it right, that tells me we don't need to spend a lot of time talking about these. There's some we'll take 5 minutes on. There's some we'll take 5 seconds on. Okay. Again, I talked about this on Monday. There used to be, just a reminder if you were with me or if you're new tonight, there used to be, and there still are, all kinds of money-making books that say 500 SAT words you have to know. I'm going to tell you, I would be very doubtful that outdo, outperform, outweigh, defeat are on those lists. I could be wrong. I haven't looked at them in a long time. But I will tell you this. You can use those lists. If you want to expand your vocabulary, that is fine. But it is not the best way to study for the SAT. I don't want to talk too long about this. I talked about it on Monday. But that is an outdated version of the test that was really vocab heavy. That was more than a decade ago. We shifted to this new format. The best way to practice is to actually practice like we're doing tonight or like you'll do on your own. You can't learn every word. These words do not seem too hard. There will be times you get frustrated because like, dude, I don't know what blank word means. It's honestly, like you're not going to get a perfect score probably on the SAT. I want to remind you that to be ready for college, the college readiness bar is just a little over half the questions right on the English portion of the exam. So they're going to give you some difficult ones. This one wasn't. This one, the answer is D, outweigh. Everyone got that one right. Again, we know outweigh is like weighing pros and cons. The advantages outweigh, tip the scales on the potential drawbacks. All right, let's keep going. I want to talk about this format. If I see, okay, let me go back. I see a big number 1, and then this is exactly how, if you look at the answer, like that column where the question was, this is exactly how it's going to look. Black box, number, gray bar, question. If I see a big number 1, I'm matching those up. You're also going to see little number 1s. This is where they start to number sentences. They often do one paragraph with specific sentence numbers. This is not numbering sentences for the whole passage. It's a specific paragraph that will be numbered. When I see this, I know there's probably going to be something out of order, or they might give me a new sentence. I got to figure out where it goes. But again, I said read skeptically. So read skeptically. If I read something here that makes you be like, oh, that doesn't sound great, it might not be great. It might be something we're going to move later. Okay, I can't answer some of these questions without reading all of these, even though there's not a question yet. Let's read these quickly. Let's go to the next question. All right, the main environmental problem caused by the production of Greek yogurt is the creation of acid whey as a byproduct. Because it requires up to 4 times more milk to make than conventional yogurt does, Greek yogurt produces larger amounts of acid whey, which is difficult to dispose of. Keep this in mind, difficult to dispose of. Again, I talked about this, environmental problem. Sentence 1, environmental problem. Let's go to sentence 3. The first question comes in sentence 4. But you'll see this on the slide. Sentence 4 is numbered. The bigger number is going to be associated with the question right next to it. Let's do it. To address the problem of disposal, farmers have found a number of uses for acid whey. They can add it to livestock feed as a protein supplement. I'm going to finish this sentence, but it could be wrong. And people can make their own Greek-style yogurt at home by straining regular yogurt, or B, C, or D. I'm not going to read all those. I want you to be able to read on the slide. Let's finish the next sentence. I don't want to answer this question. I'm going to pause and read the question, but I'm not going to answer it until I read the following sentence, sentence 5. So what I have to do here is which choice provides the most relevant detail. Let's just read the context, and then let's match up the detail. These are all 4 grammatically correct sentences, but one of them is going to match the thought flow of the paragraph. All right, so sentence 5. If it is improperly introduced into the environment, acid-way runoff can pollute waterways, depleting the oxygen content of streams and rivers as it decomposes. All right, this one will take you a little bit longer. Read through B, C, and D. Which one best fits the flow of the entire paragraph? And I'm going to remind you, I'm not going to go back to the slide, but I'm going to remind you that the slide before it talked about environmental problems. That's where we're building up to. Go ahead and take a look. When you've got it, throw your answer in the chat. We'll take a solid minute to think through this. Before you look back at the chat, have your answer in mind. This one's definitely harder than the first one. I'll give you another good 30 seconds right now in the chat. Because this is a harder one, we have 3 different answers. So we definitely will just make sure we feel good about this before moving on. We'll do about 10 more seconds. All right. In the chat, I appreciate everyone participating. Put yourself out there. We're anonymous or we have our name, but here's the best way you practice. Again, knowing that very, very, very few people get perfect scores. So there's no shame in getting something wrong, especially the hard questions. We got some D, we got some B, we got some A. Let's take a look. Best answer is B. That was the majority answer. Let's talk about why. I'm going to read B. I'm going to read it as it should sound. So I'm going to start at sentence 4. They can add it to livestock feed as a protein, go to B, supplement, and convert it into gas to use as fuel in electricity production. I even had someone in the chat say that electricity production is like throwing me off. Like, why are they talking about electricity? That can't be right. Here's why. Out of A, B, C, and D, there's only one that focuses on the environment. This whole paragraph's about the environment. Let me go back real quick. The main environmental problem is sentence 1. They could be out of order, but look at what's in every sentence. Difficult to dispose of at the end of sentence 2. Really focused on like that's a problem because of the environment. Sentence 3, to address the problem of disposal. That's an environmental problem. Sentence 4, we're looking at sentence 5. If improperly introduced into the environment. So they can add it to livestock feed as a protein supplement and convert it into gas to use as fuel. That is an effective, environmental friendly way of getting rid of the waste. That is why. Throw any questions or anything I can clarify into the chat for me. I'm going to pause for just 5 seconds to make sure if anything comes through, I'll address it. But again, everything's about the environment. Now, this one was tough. This one was tough because B did not mention environment. You had to kind of connect the dots that convert it into gas means we're disposing of it. So if environment's not obvious enough, think about disposal. Disposal, that word is literally in sentence 3 and sentence 2, building up to it. Okay, when they say convert it, this is a question from the chat. Are they talking about converting the livestock feed or converting the acid way? Let's just track that sentence again. They can add it to livestock feed as protein and then convert it into gas. So the answer there would be both. Once they add it to the livestock feed, it's all converted into gas. As opposed to having all of this waste, they kind of add it to the feed and it all is converted into gas. So it's both the feed with this new stuff they're trying to dispose of as well. Okay, good question. Let's look at sentence 3. Question 3 we just read. I won't read it again. This one is easier. Let's see how we do. This is one of those verb tense questions. I will talk through this, but it's always better for you to look at it on your own before the teacher tells you what the answer is or where to look. So take a look at number 3. Put your answer in the chat for which do you think is the best answer here. This one won't take us as long. Before you pull up the chat, just have your answer in mind. Don't let other people sway your answer. I'll tell you exactly what the answer is in about 20 seconds. I see some more coming in. All right. Everyone's in agreement here. This was an easy one. So, they often don't give you 2 super hard ones in a row, which is a nice thing that College Board does. So they're not going to be like, here's like the worst 4 questions or the hardest 4 questions in a row. 1 was easy. 2 is pretty tough. 3 is easy. The answer here, as you all agreed on, was A. Just a quick reminder, B and D are my first 2 I'm crossing out, process of elimination, because waterways, apostrophe S, that is a word, but that would be possessive. And this is not possessive. That'd be like the waterways boats are moving fast today, something like that. Okay, so now we're down to A and C. Let's just look at it. I told you as I started talking at the beginning, when you're looking at verb tense questions, can pollute is parallel with sentence 4. They can add. So you're looking for the verbs in the sentences surrounding it, and you're staying parallel. Yep, we got this. Let's move to number 4. Okay, number 4. This one's easy, but I'm going to take this opportunity to pause after you answer this question to just make sure we're good with colons and semicolons as well. Let's read. I keep saying sentence 4. I apologize. Question 4, sentence 6. All right, yogurt manufacturers, food scientists, and government officials are also working together to develop additional solutions for reusing whey. I think this is an easy question. Don't overthink this question. Put your answer in the chat once you just take a look at the answer choices. Got about half of us got them in already. Take your time to make sure you're confident. We'll do maybe 10 more seconds. Okay. Looks like we've got a lot of agreement as I expected. This is one of the easiest punctuation questions I've seen, but I do want to take the opportunity to talk about semicolons and colons. Items in a list, you're always going to use a comma. C is correct. Yogurt manufacturers, food scientists, and government officials. Throw that comma before the and, not after the and, like D is saying. Let's talk real quick. This is a good pause point. Semicolon, colon. I got the chat open if I can help out any more than I am about to. This might be review. This might be just a good reminder you haven't thought about in 4 months. A semicolon, I'm putting that in the chat, combines 2 sentences. Easy. They have to be complete sentences, right? So just check. Does this half stand alone? Does this half stand alone? I can combine them together. Okay. Colons are harder. Colons are the two dots. They provide additional info. And when I say they, let me be clear on that. What comes after the colon is additional information. Here's something I want you to know and just like own this. What comes before the colon must be a complete thought or a complete sentence. It would not be this. At the store today, I bought colon, eggs, ham, and bacon. Right? And you know that. But it could be this. At the store today, I bought a lot of things. Colon, eggs, ham, and bacon. If that doesn't make sense, let me know in the chat. No shame of asking a quick question. But I want to actually add on something that matters on the SAT that you don't see as often. You all probably knew colons come before an item in a list. I just want you to know, hey, that's if there's a complete sentence before it. Here's something else that's super annoying but super true. You can actually use a colon or a semicolon sometimes interchangeably. Okay. My name is Mr. Steinhauser. You can call me Kevin. Here's the deal, though. For this, I'll do Mr. Steinhauser. Mr. Steinhauser. I'm typing up a sentence in the chat, so make sure you have that pulled open. And I'll answer this question first. If it was, I bought colon, eggs, bread, milk, that is incorrect punctuation. You just don't need any punctuation. So take that colon out and that sentence is perfect, right? I bought eggs, bread, and milk. Okay, Mr. Steinhauser lives in Colorado. I'm going to put a colon next. You might see the sun shining in. I'm in my classroom right now at school. You might see the sun coming in on my face. So it is sunny out today. It's only 6:41 here. Okay. That is acceptable. Let me just talk about this because this is pretty tricky, actually. A semicolon is just as good as a colon here. The reason the colon works is providing extra information about Colorado. So, again, you can call me Kevin. Kevin lives in Colorado. It is sunny out today. That's just as acceptable. That's me combining two sentences. Here's the good news. I just want you to know that, and I don't want you to get thrown. I don't want you to be like, oh, it is sunny out today is not a list, so it can't be a colon. That is incorrect. A colon just introduces extra information, which is often stuff in a list. So Kevin lives in Colorado. Punctuate it. It is sunny out today. Good news. SAT, College Board, no one, hopefully in your life, is ever going to be like, choose the better option. They're both acceptable options. You're never going to get a question that gives you a colon and a semicolon at the same time if the colon could be an answer, right? Okay, if you have more questions, let me know, but I think we're feeling good. Let's move on to the next one. We're going to go quicker now after sentence 5. This one, I'm just going to show you real quick because of our time tonight. These are the questions I was talking about where they do take a little bit longer. So again, if you're kind of going a little bit too slow to like finish on time, do this quickly, move on, take your best guess. Don't get sucked into this type of question. So the question says, question 5, to make this paragraph most logical, sentence 5 should be placed where? These are annoying. These just take time, but these are a really good skill to keep getting better at. So they're going to give you 4 options. Keep it where it is or after sentence 1, 2, or 3. Let me just tell you the answer and I'll show you the flow. The way you're going to do this on your own is just plug it in to each location, read the sentence before and after it, and just guess and check for flow. I shouldn't say guess and check, test and check is a better way to say that. Test and check for flow, process of elimination. If it doesn't sound good, there's only going to be one best answer. Here's our best answer. It's answer C after sentence 2. So let's build up to it. I move sentence 5 up. The main environmental problem caused by the production of Greek yogurt is the creation of acid whey as a byproduct. Because it requires up to 4 times more milk to make than conventional yogurt does, Greek yogurt produces larger amounts of acid whey, which is difficult to dispose of. If it is improperly introduced into the environment, acid whey runoff can pollute waterways, depleting the oxygen content, of streams and rivers as it decomposes. Let's just track why this is the best answer. Sentence 2 is stating the problem, which is difficult to dispose of. Here's elaborating on the problem. If it is improperly introduced, which means not disposed of well, it depletes the oxygen content of streams and rivers. This, as opposed to going problem, solution, more information on the problem, give me the details on the problem, and then we'll shift to the solution, which was that tough question we talked about. Okay, let's go to number 6. Again, if I go too fast and you want me to circle back, just let me know. I got the chat open. Number 6, let's read this sentence. It's all underlined. Though this is a new paragraph, so the sentences aren't numbered anymore. Though these conservation methods can be costly and time-consuming, they are well worth the effort. Now, I am going to read the question. The writer is considering deleting this underlined sentence. This is what would be the topic sentence, right? Should the writer do it? Well, I have no clue yet because I don't know what this paragraph is about. The topic sentence should serve as just the main idea of the paragraph or what the paragraph is primarily about. Let's read and let's figure out. Now, I am reading with a purpose. Is this about... Okay, this is a transition. The previous paragraph talked about time consumption, costly conservation methods, right? We talked about like adding it to the feed, converting it to gas. Now, is this paragraph about the benefits, well worth these efforts? So if this paragraph is about the benefits, I'm keeping it. If it's not, I'm deleting it. All right, let's keep going though. Let's keep that in mind. Next, nutritionists consider Greek yogurt to be a healthy food. It is an excellent source of calcium and protein, serves blank. I'm going to say blank because it's equally right or wrong, A, B, C, or D. Serves blank, a digestive aid, and it contains, that might be changed, few calories in its unsweetened, low and non-fat forms. Okay, I interrupted the flow of that sentence a couple times. Reread it if you need to. And then once you do, answer in the chat for number 7. This is just you getting control of the flow of language like I talked about to begin tonight. Which one of these best fits here to serve this flow of thought? I have the chat open. Go ahead and put your answers in. I got 6 answers already. Got a few more coming in. This one will go quick. 10 more seconds and I'll tell you the answer. All right. We are in full agreement of everyone in the chat. Our answer for number 7 is B, serves as a blank. That is just, again, I can't really teach you this. There's no hidden sneaky like information I'm withholding from you. It's just you either are used to that type of expression of language or not. The more you read or talk to people, right, the more you pick up on just this type of language. Serves as a blank, right? We all got it, but just know people who miss this one, like it's just got to get a little bit more exposure to like the flow of thought or the flow of ideas in writing. Obviously, we all did pretty well on this one. There's no hidden tricks. There's no like study tools. Other than exposure to this is like a really good way. If you are to miss a question like this, take some more SAT practice because you'll get very similar things. You know, you could read all of Moby Dick and never get to this. So I say read for exposure. That is absolutely true. But if you want to make sure you see these types of things, the more SAT practice you do, the more you'll see it. All right. The good news is Khan Academy and College Board, they give you the answer. So they're not withholding anything for you for all those free practice resources. All right, let's look at number 8. I already read this sentence. This is a verb again, a verb tense question. I'm going to read from the colon. We're talking about Greek yogurt. It is an excellent source of calcium and protein, serves as a digestive aid, and blanks few calories in its unsweetened, low and non-fat forms. Again, if you know what I mean when I say parallel structure, if your teachers use that term, it means I've got 3 clauses here. Make sure the verb matches up, the style matches up. That's the test. All right, let's see what you got in the chat. Got a bunch of answers already coming in. We'll just do 30 seconds. All right, everybody. We're in agreement once again. Answer C. Again, let's just walk through this, but let's do it quickly because this one we all got. It is my verb, serves, and contains. Let's be clear. I have it here, but because I don't have it here, I don't want it here. So my it, all three verbs are going back to that as our subject. It is, I only need to say it once. Serves, contains, go back to it. Number 9, let's read. This is a transition question, which is you're going to get at least 4 of these on the real SAT. Here's the deal. You got to read at least the sentence before and after it. As I read, you're looking for the relationship between the first sentence I read and the sentence after it. So I'm going to read 2 sentences, just focusing on number 9. Answer in your own head. What's the relationship between these 2 sentences? And then choose the best transition to show that relationship. Okay, Greek yogurt is slightly lower in sugar and carbohydrates than conventional yogurt is. I'm going to read this as blank. Transition word, because it is more concentrated, Greek yogurt also, my bad, I totally didn't mean to do that. Let me start that over. Because it is more concentrated, Greek yogurt contains slightly more protein per serving, thereby helping people stay satiated for longer periods of time. Okay, we might come back to satiated, but focus on number 9. Think about the relationship between those 2 sentences. Which transition captures that relationship? We've got 5 or 6 answers in the chat once again. All right, everybody. We're in agreement. We're going quick on this one because we got this. Again, the relationship is these are 2 different benefits. Number 1 is it's slightly lower in sugar. Number 2, it contains more protein. So the best transition here is also, I got 1, I also got 2. Nice job. We got 2 more practice questions before we start to close out. Number 10, this is another one, and this is maybe the most annoying one. Do this without Google. I know you got Google right in front of you, so do I. But here's the deal. On SAT, you want, so let's just practice real quick, and I'll go through these. This is a word choice. Again, I don't recommend spending too much energy on the SAT word prep test prep books. College Board doesn't put those out anymore. Here's what I do recommend. You'll know most of these words. Use process of elimination. Take your best guess. So here's what I want you to do. Read it in context. Let me just read it again. Greek yogurt contains slightly more protein per serving, thereby helping people stay blank for longer periods of time. Okay. Take your best guess on this one using process of elimination. I'll talk through all 4 of these in a second. We're doing good tonight, people. I'm just going to do 5 more seconds to give people time who are still thinking through it. We are in agreement that was harder based on if you knew what satiated meant. These 4 are all similar words. Again, these are the type of questions that do separate like scores to a certain degree. You like not everyone's going to get this question right. We did really well today. Satiated means full and satisfied. That's the best answer, A. Be fulfilled. That's not, so fulfilled similar, but not in like a my stomach is fulfilled way. Satiated means like often the connotation is I'm satiating my hunger. Fulfilled, I can be fulfilled emotionally, right? So that one's a little bit too broad. Complacent means I'm satisfied, but more in like a, no, I'm good, I'm not doing anything type of way. Insufficient means like it's good enough. Again, the best one, the one that's talking about food, is A, satiated. All right, this is our last question. Then we're going to go back to number 6, actually, so we got 2 more. All right, I clicked on accident the wrong way, so you might have seen the answer. Hopefully you didn't. All right, let's look at this. These health benefits have prompted Greek yogurt's recent surge in popularity. In fact, Greek yogurt can be found in an increasing number of products, such as snack food and frozen desserts. Because consumers reap the nutritional benefits of Greek yogurt and support those who make and sell it, blank, I'm going to let you figure out the best flow here. It's something farmers and businesses should continue finding safe and effective methods of producing the food. Okay, I'm done reading the text. We are going to have time to do number 6, but let's do number 11 before we go back to 6. You might need to reread that last sentence for flow of thought. I've got about half of you already answered, but take your time if you're still looking through it. All right, 5 seconds. I'm going to show you what we got. And most of us got it. I do want to pause. There's a couple A's. So let's just read how it's supposed to sound real quick. Because consumers reap the nutritional benefits of Greek yogurt and support those who make and sell it, farmers and businesses should continue finding safe. Okay, and then we'll pause. That's perfect. Now, I know back in 4th grade, your teacher was like, never, ever start a sentence with because. But that's because the 4th graders in your class were all just saying because they should, because, and then just like a word or two. You can start with a dependent clause and build to your independent clause. Dependent clause here, because this, comma, main clause. So you don't, because and therefore kind of act similarly. You don't need both. That's why A is incorrect. Because is my dependent clause. Just get to the independent clause of farmers and businesses should continue finding safe and effective methods of producing the food. All right, we're doing good. We got one more question. We are perfect timing to end here in about 2 minutes. Let's look at one more thing. Let's go back to it. I'm going to have you answer this question in the chat. Let's go back to it before you do that. This is the topic sentence. Do we like it as a topic sentence? Though these conservation methods can be costly and time-consuming, that was a reference back to paragraph 2, they are well worth the effort. Is this paragraph talking about the benefits? If it is, we are not deleting it, so it's C or D. If this is off topic, we're deleting it for one of these 2 reasons. So always have in your mind, am I keeping it or not? Have your reason why, and then just brain match with the options, C or D or A or B. Okay, give you some time to think. Take your time. This is our last question. Answers are starting to pop in. Before you pull up the chat, know what you think. All right. This one's longer. I'm going to give you about 20 more seconds of think time, and I'll just go over the answer in 20 seconds. All right, people. The answer is D. We're not deleting the sentence. It sets up the argument for benefits. Beautiful. Okay, so just to keep that in mind. When you get a sentence like this, know what you're looking for as you keep reading, but don't forget to come back to it. I would not answer that until I would just answer all the other questions as you go. Don't read the whole paragraph for number 6. Read the whole paragraph, pause on 7, pause on 8, pause on 9, go back to 6. All right. Everyone, great work today. I hope this was productive. I hope this was helpful. We have a wrap up, kind of like one last reminder on Friday. I am streaming the first half of that for the English portion. We are going to just be doing some reminders and one more practice round. If you're taking the SAT this weekend, try to come there. If not, if you can't make it, good luck. Glad you were here today. You may sign out. I'll pause for any questions for about coming back for like 20 seconds, then we'll close out the stream. Good night, everybody. Good work today. You're very welcome. Thanks for being here. Have a good night, everybody. Looks like we're good. All right. See you all later.